Hey guys, it's Camera Review for the first season of the Hulu original series, Shrill. So what Shrill is essentially about is we center on the character of Annie, and she is this woman that is very overweight, but she's not really upset about that. That's not something that she is bothered by. She tries to navigate the world as best as she can. The rest of the show is basically her trying to turn her life around the best way while also juggling with many various obstacles in her life. And I went into this show not really knowing anything. All I really heard is that the show was surprisingly very well praised at like South by Southwest and other film festivals and things like that. And I was very interested in checking it out. I didn't really know a ton about it, and I knew it was 6 episodes, so I knew it'd be an easy binge. And after watching it, I'm really happy I did because I really enjoyed this show a lot. I think this is a very well done first season. It does a very good job at delving into some very heavy issues for sure that I really did love seeing here. And it's a much different show than I really was expecting overall. We're just getting into right now, starting off with the cast. And that is easily one of the best things I think about this entire season. The entire cast really does do a great job, but without a doubt, the stand on this entire show and the person that really does carry it is Aidy Bryant as the character of Annie, who I've seen her in a couple things before, like some SNL skits, and I saw her and I Feel Pretty. Haven't really thought that much of her. That changes here. I thought she was fantastic in this series. I really did love her character here. Annie is someone who is very confident and is very positive, but she does struggle with, some past issues she's had involving her obesity and the way people do treat her and things like that. And where she ends up going as a character this season, I really did love. She is this one scene, especially in episode 4, that I thought was absolutely incredible, and I really have not seen this kind of range in her before, and I'm really glad that I did because I definitely do want to be on the lookout for her. I think she was very well casted here. I really do love what she did, and I think this is another one of those roles where you're going to stumble across this actress that you might have seen a couple times, but you're really going to see that potential in her. You're really going to see how great of an actress she really can be, and hopefully this really does propel her forward into more leading roles because this show definitely shows that it is very well deserved, and I really do want to see her do much more serious work after this. As far as the rest of the cast goes, everyone else really does do a really good job. No one really is on Bryant's level, but I really did like Lottie Adefope, I think is how you pronounce her name. She was definitely really good as Annie's best friend, Fran. I really did like where her character ended up going. Someone that did surprise me was Luka Jones as the character of Ryan. He is Annie's sort of on and off again boyfriend. I really didn't think I was going to like him all that much in the beginning, but he really did impress me towards the back half of the season, and I was overall very impressed by him. John Cameron Mitchell, I thought, was really good as Annie's boss. Julia Sweeny is fantastic as Annie's mother. She has some really great scenes here. Daniel Stern is also very well done. Really, the whole cast, I think, really does do a very strong job here. But now I really want to get into the directing and the writing because that's really what makes this show. I think the directing to the show right off the bat is very well done. What I really do like about the show is that this is a show that deals with things like obesity and, other issues that are going on, but it does it in a very positive way. It's always trying to be very positive. It's always trying to be very lighthearted, and it does a good job with that, but it does not let the comedy undermine the more serious aspects of what's going on. It's just Annie is a very carefree woman. She likes to live her life to the fullest of her ability, and I really did like seeing that. I think the tone really does go in conjunction with Annie's character, and I was overall really enjoying the way the show was directed overall. But the writing is what impressed me even more because here's the thing about this show. This is a short season and it is a pretty simple show, but there is still a lot that's going on. The best of it, without a doubt, being our main character. I think Annie is a very well written character because, again, she is very positive and she definitely is trying to be as, she's trying to have as successful of a life as possible, but that doesn't mean that there aren't drawbacks in her life, because there definitely are things that have kept her from doing that, especially when it comes to her obesity, which I think was very well handled in this series. A big part of this show is that people tend to put her down, or they tend to make her think that she is not as important that she is, and limit her from doing things solely because of her weight. It's something that she has struggled with, and she doesn't necessarily let it bother her, but obviously it is something that is going to possibly set her off. I mean, just there's one episode in particular where someone mentions being a slob, and that really does get to her, and I think the show handles that in a really realistic manner. It never tries to make it the main topic of what's going on, but it is a big part of Annie's life. Fat shaming is a very real thing, and we very much do see that within this series, but we also see Annie try to avoid that and not let it get to her, and I think that's a very empowering thing for people who do struggle with weight and things like that. And again, Annie is someone who, sure, she does struggle with it, but she doesn't really let that bother her. And I really did enjoy seeing that, what the show has to say about people who are obese, and not necessarily normalizing it. That's not what it's trying to do. It's just showing that they are people, and at the end of the day, they deserve as much decency and as much respect in the world as everyone else does. And I think that's a very good message. And sure, we've seen other shows deal with that message before, but that was the thing that really impressed me the most about about the show. And whenever it does go back to her dealing with those issues, because she has had quite a lot of them. I mean, whether it's through her parents, or through just something her coworker says to her, or through this troll that constantly keeps coming up, which we'll get to that in a little bit. That is one of the things that I was very impressed with in this series. It never gets too heavy-handed. It handles it in a very naturalistic manner, and I was very impressed by the way it handled that issue. But the other major aspect of this season that they touch upon is the idea of trolling, because Annie is obese and things like that. She starts writing about it, and this troll starts getting to her. It starts leaving these really nasty comments, and a lot of the season is her trying to figure out how to deal with this troll. And I think this was a good story. It's just the way that it was executed this season felt very rushed. I felt like they could have done a little bit more with this story overall. And again, I don't think it's a bad idea. I just don't think it was necessarily the best thing they could have focused on. Again, they really do focus on Annie living her life. Like, that is the main focus. But whenever they come back to the troll stuff, while I was into it, it was more of how it affects Annie than who is this troll, and trying to get more into that. And it's not necessarily an issue. It's just something that I think they could have handled just a little bit better overall. But again, the thing I really do love about the show is that it doesn't just concentrate on the obesity stuff, because again, Annie is just trying to live her life. So a lot of the show is just seeing her live her life, whether it's through her relationship with Ryan, who it is quite complicated because you don't really know how serious Ryan really is. A lot of her friends don't really trust him. He is someone who tends to be very shady. He doesn't really have much of a job or anything. But getting into that relationship, I thought was actually really well handled. I thought for a while they were really rushing it, but where they end up taking it at the end of season 1 was something I genuinely really did enjoy, and I thought that was handled very well. Or through her relationship with Fran, which, even though these two are really good friends, there are things that Fran has done too that definitely does bother Annie, and I like seeing that. Or even a relation with her parents, which I thought got really interesting towards the beginning. It starts off and you think that it's just a really normal relationship. A lot of it is her trying to help her father because her father has contracted cancer, and she's trying to deal with that as well. But you realize it's a lot more complicated than that, and I really like getting into that side of things. I was not expecting them to go as deep as they did, but they definitely did a really good job. But again, I want to reiterate, the show is still a lot of fun, and that's something I really did enjoy about. There's a lot of really funny jokes within this show, some of them that honestly did have me dying, and I do think it does handle the comedy quite well. and I don't think that it ever really undermined the drama. I do think that for the most part, the show did stay grounded in reality, and I was overall really impressed by that for the most part. I do think they did a good job with that. That does, however, lead me to my one issue with the show, and that is, while I do think Annie is a very well-written character, I think she is easily the best part of this show, because of how focused this season is on her, the other characters just don't really get that same treatment. They do towards the back half. They definitely try to give these characters more in the back half of the season, and it definitely sets up some interesting arcs for season 2, but at the end of the day, I really only cared about Annie. She was the character that I, was with the most. I really did feel for her, the situation that she's going through, and it's not like I didn't care about the other characters. I definitely did. It's just I did not feel they put that same care into them like they did with Annie, and maybe this was a deliberate choice considering that this is actually based off a memoir, from an actual person that is obese in real life, and it's kind of sort of an autobiography, but I heard she did change up some things overall. And again, maybe because of the fact that it is supposed to be so focused on Annie, that's just a choice, but I do think that some of the characters could have had a little bit more to do, specifically when it comes to her friend at work. I wanted a little bit more from him. They definitely gave him more to do in the back half of this, in like the last episode of the season, but I kept forgetting who he really was, and he just did not leave that much of an impact on me as a character, and I think they could have done a little bit more with that. Also, as much as I did get invested into the whole story with the troll, the way things wrapped up there, I really did not feel it was 100% earned. It did not really work for me. It honestly did feel a little anticlimactic, and I think it could have been a little bit better. I'll get more into it with spoilers, but just overall, I think they could have done more there, and I just felt a little let down by it. In terms of the look of the show, there isn't really a lot to comment on. It's pretty much shot like any other comedy. There are definitely some really good stylistic choices. Like anytime like in episode 4, we have a lot of flashbacks with her, and some of the choices that they make I thought were really well done for sure. In the back half of the season, Annie starts to become a lot more confident with herself, and you see her start to loosen up a bit, and there definitely were some symbolic sort of things they did that I definitely did like overall, but nothing really too huge to comment on in that department. The score I did think was really good too, and the editing. This show is very fast paced. It's a very easy binge. It's only 6 episodes, and a lot of the episodes are only like 24 minutes long, so it's very easy to get through, and really did fly by to me. There wasn't really a single time in the show where I was bored. I was pretty much into it throughout the entirety of its 6 episodes, and I do think they did a really good job with that overall. And like I said, there wasn't really a point where I wasn't into what was going on. But now I do want to quickly get into some spoilers, so if you haven't seen Shrill Season 1, I'm not going to spoil a ton of things because stuff does happen in this season, just not as much as you would expect, so I'm just going to get into it. Now, let me get into the things that I like, because the finale overall I definitely thought was really good, and I definitely really did enjoy it, but I do think there were some choices made that I wasn't too keen with. The stuff that I liked was all of the confrontations that Annie had, especially the one between her and her mother, because throughout most of the season, these two seem to have a really good relationship. You can tell that her mom, she really does care about Annie, but there's a lot of things that she seems to be constantly hearkening back to. She's so obsessed with Annie and her father trying to get along, and her trying to play the oboe and things like that. And so once her and her father are connecting, it is a really good moment, but that also gets her to sort of lash out at Annie because she reads that article that Annie wrote, and I thought that whole scene between them was really well done, where, she talks about how Annie said that she was a horrible mom, and Annie talks about how, her mom clearly didn't realize the impact that she had on her, and I thought that whole scene was really well done. That's something that I definitely really did enjoy. And the direction to have her mom go to Vancouver, though, that's an interesting one. I don't really know what they're getting at there. I was really hoping that they were not going to kill off Daniel Stern, and thankfully they didn't. I thought they were setting us up for failure, where suddenly he's okay, and then, where he said he's okay and things like that, and then, he ends up collapsing or something. And I'm glad they didn't do that. I feel like a lot of shows would do that, and I'm glad that this show chose to refrain from that, because I think it was definitely the right choice. I'm interested in seeing where that ends up going. Also, the stuff between her and Fran, I thought was also really well done, because I think Annie did have some really good points here. Fran also had some points, where, you can understand why she doesn't trust Ryan and things like that. But you can also understand why Annie thinks Fran doesn't really have a right to do that, because she hasn't handled the best relationships with her girlfriends either. And I thought that was a really good scene, and the scene between Fran and the one girl that she's going out with, and she talks about how, are we doing the right thing? That was a really good thing to end on, her realizing that maybe she can make this relationship last. And I'm hoping we get a little bit more into Fran's character. I like where they're going with her, and I want to see more. The most surprising, though, was the stuff they did with Ryan. I was not expecting them to go in the direction that they did. When him and Annie broke up, I expected them to just be friends throughout the rest of the season, but they end up getting back together. And look, a lot of shows I would say this was rushed, but again, considering how Annie is starting to feel more confident about herself, and she's starting to let less things get to her than the way they did before, I think this makes a lot of sense. Ryan is really one of the only people that treats her as an individual. He treats her as a normal person. He does not he doesn't try to talk down to her about her obesity and things like that. He just really cares about her. And the one moment that really did stick out to me is the moment where they're about to have sex. And if you notice throughout the, most of the season when they're having sex, she still is clothed. She still makes sure that she has a bra on or something like that. And the moment where she tells him to remove it, I mean, it's a very little thing, but it's in a way her finally being able to fully be herself around him. And I thought that was a really nice moment. And again, maybe I'm looking into it too much, but I think that's really what they were trying to go for. It's that Annie is finally comfortable with her own body and around Ryan. And I really did like that moment overall. And again, I was hoping they weren't setting us up where Ryan was the troll. Thankfully, they didn't. However, that's my biggest problem with this episode. The confrontation between her and the troll, at first, I thought was really well done. I like and I like where everything was heading up to till then. Like, I like that she quit her job. Even though I do think that her boss did have some points where it's like, sure, you do work here, but you can't just post whatever you want. Like, we have specific articles that we want you to write, and, you are to you can post what you want, but you have to run it by me first. So I can understand where Gabe is coming from in that respect, but you can also understand why Annie did just flat out quit on him. She's had it with all the bullshit. The troll's really gone to her, and she doesn't want to deal with it anymore. So you can understand that. What didn't work as well for me is the confrontation with the troll. I thought at first it made a lot of sense, where he's telling her that, you know, nobody really, he himself had body issues in, his school years, and that she was very confident, that she tries not to let it get to her. And even though he disagrees with what she's saying, he envies her confidence. He envies the fact that she feels good about herself, and that she has this very sort of vibrant attitude, because he doesn't have that. And I really liked that idea. And what I thought they were initially trying to set up is that maybe these two were going to connect. Maybe he was going to become a potential friend for her. He seemed like he was a bit of a recluse and things like that. But then there's that moment where he invites her to drink, and that's where this went downhill for me. Most of the season is grounded in reality, but this is the one scene this season that felt way too silly. Her throwing rocks at the car and things like that, it just didn't really work. And the way they ended the season, I thought, was far too abrupt. And again, I get what they were trying to get at, that he was clearly like leading her on and things like that. But I wanted them to go somewhere else with that whole confrontation, and that did disappoint me a little bit. Again, it's not enough to say this season wasn't good, because again, it's really just that last moment at the end that did bring this down for me a bit. It was a bit disappointing. I was hoping that that whole confrontation would be something a little bit more of a turning point for the show. I was hoping that we would kind of turn it on its head and maybe get inside the mindset of this troll, but instead, he's just generic guy that clearly is just a psychopath and wants to sleep with her, and that's it. And I was hoping that it'd be something more. It seemed like it was going to be, but it wasn't. Other than that, though, there's a lot to really like about the season. I do think for the most part, the finale was really well handled. It's just the build up to the troll did not feel very earned, and that definitely did not work as well for me.
Like I said, I really do like all of these characters. Some of them start off a bit rocky for me, but towards the end, I really did get to like all of them. I mean, I want to see more of Julia Sweeney and Daniel Stern. I want to see more of Fran. I want to see more of Ryan. Hell, I even want to see more of that girl that worked with Annie. Even though Annie quit her job, I definitely want to see more of her. The one that helped her identify her catfish. That stuff was great. That girl probably had some of the funniest lines of the entire season, and I hope we do get to see more of her because I really do like this cast overall. And hopefully, if the show does get picked up for a season 2, we can explore these characters as deep as we did explore Annie this season.
Overall, though, this show very much did surprise me. Like I said, it is a very simple show overall, but that's one of the reasons why I really do enjoy it. It's about normalizing, someone who is obese. It's about seeing them in a normal way. It's about trying to not let those discrimination affect you. It's trying to, you're trying to just live your life, and I think that's a really good message overall. Aidy Bryant alone is enough a reason to check this out. I think she is definitely a star in the making after the show for sure. I am very interested in seeing where they do end up going in season 2, if they get a season 2, which I do think is very likely. Hulu has pretty much been renewing everything. There's rarely a show that they don't renew, and this is a pretty big show for them, so I have a feeling they're probably going to renew it. That it definitely is a very fun show, but again, it also does delve into some very heavy issues that I wasn't really expecting, and I think overall it is going to surprise you. I wouldn't say this is a must-watch or anything, but it is a show that I do think is very well done. It's much better than I really could have expected it to be, and definitely one of the most surprising of the year for me for sure. And I think if you are a little skeptical about it, maybe give it a watch, because I do think this is something that is really good and has potential to turn into a potentially really great show. But overall, I really did enjoy this first season a lot, and I'm definitely going to give Shrill season 1 overall a B plus. But overall, guys, in my review the first season of Shrill, let me know what you guys saw this season overall, left your thoughts, and we'll see you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.